generation thing. Yeah? All right, so we're going to start off by this. A generation is usually, the gap between the person's birth and the birth of his children or her children. That would be defined like a generation. And here we have something like 4 generations, a breakdown of 4 generations. So we have traditionalists, we have baby boomers, Generation X, and millennials, right? We also call millennials Generation Y, and they have some other names, like the lost generation, some people call it, right? I'd rather call them millennials, sounds very cool though. So we're going to refer to millennials as those born within the last quarter of the 20th century, okay? Just because there's never a clear cut there, we'll call them millennials to those born within the last quarter of the 20th century. So, who are baby boomers? There's a very brief description of baby boomers, and those would be learners, or not exactly learners, but people who are very optimistic. They always have a can-do attitude. They're hardworking, and they would, something very interesting is that they would sacrifice family matters and for their careers and their personal objectives. All right. This is not exactly what can fit you, because there are stereotyping things and many other aspects that we should take into account when labeling a person a baby boomer. Then we're going to have the Generation X, and this Generation X is defined as independent and resourceful individuals. They are individuals that want to be paid for their performance, and they don't look for some kind of tenure thing as a basis of their rewards. They just want to see the money, in a sense. They are very highly educated, and they just they have a very short-term orientation in terms of money. They want to receive a lot of money in short term because they think they're doing a great job, for instance. And then this takes us to millennials. So millennials would be individuals who have never known a time without technology. So millennials have always had technology in their hands. And there's a very important distinction here, and it says that millennials would see technology as part of who they are, and the older generations would see technology as a tool to accomplish a specific task. So technology for millennials is who they are, in a sense. All right, and here we have some other characteristics for millennials. They are family-centric, achievement-oriented, team-oriented, confident and ambitious, and they are not afraid of questioning authority. You see that? Which would be a very interesting characteristic. While older generations would do what authorities say, so millennials would be very willing to question authority. They look for new challenges, and they are multitasking individuals. They have a lot of skills. Another interesting thing is that they are awake 24 hours a day. And that is because they are attached to their devices. Today, perhaps they sleep with their cell phone under the pillow. Right? And then you start waking up in the middle of the night and replying to your classmates or to your friends. And very interestingly as well is that they are attracted to organizations committed to social responsibility. That's very interesting. Very cool. All right. So so far, is there any kind of characteristic you would like to add to what millennials are, or perhaps baby boomers or X generation? No? No characteristics? Any other that you want to add? All right. So also millennials want to be involved and included in meaningful activities. Activities that provide opportunities for learning. And they love teamwork. And this is very interesting. They like to receive feedback. And feedback in the sense of guidance. I mean, not in the sense of correcting, but in the sense of guidance. And when a millennial does not receive feedback, you will feel like something is going wrong. So like if your instructor is not giving you feedback, so then you feel, oh, what's going on? Did I do something wrong or that? So then it is very important for them to receive feedback. Not, yeah.
Maybe they want to receive feedback even from their parents.
Sure.
Not only from in the academic system.
Absolutely. They want to receive guidance because they are attention craving people. They want to get attention. And that is perfectly understandable because our parents and we still give a lot of attention to our children. That's why they are like that. And there's a very fine distinction here. The differentiation between feedback and correction, right? I'm not going to address that, but we should think about that. Sometimes we have the tendency of correcting people, but in fact it is not exactly when we have the tendency of providing feedback. Anyways, all right, I'm going to show you this thing. That was a very old photo I had, and I scanned it last night. And this woman there, she was my great-grandmother, and she was a teacher speaker. And she died a long time ago. And I remember that she used to say, "La letra con sangre entra." Right? La letra con sangre entra. And that was something that really shocked me at the beginning. Then I got used to it. And then there were some, well, I had problems in high school because I could not speak Spanish properly. Since she was a teacher speaker, she would speak to me in Quechua. And the people at the school, they wouldn't understand me. Even my mother wouldn't accept that I speak Quechua. So then, things like learning the other language was very complicated for me. So then, I had some problems learning that, and many other aspects of social skills. But the point is this. She used to say that, proverbs or sayings like that, la letra con sangre entra, which is not appropriate to say now, right? Because we are in a different time, in a different era, perhaps, so to speak. There are some other sayings that perhaps we have heard in the corridors, or in student circles, or instructor circles. Like, for example, when I was a student, I never dared to question my professor, right? So when I was a student, I never dared to say that. Or things like when I was younger, I would always do what other people say. And I would always say hello to other people. Those beliefs, those values, that I'm not saying that they are bad or good, but just simply they are different, because we're living in a different era right now. Also things like class goes ad nauseum sometimes, right? So this is what you hear from students. Well, you would hear this from instructors or from your parents. Students would say this, class goes ad nauseum. There's nothing interesting in my class and nothing useful for me. is not to say either that instructors are preparing boring classes. Yes, it's not that. It's just there's not a match between what your instructor believes and what student believes is useful. Right? I just want to put that clear before we go into the bottom. Also, this is pretty much what I feel or what I felt. Why should I learn Spanish orthography if the computer does it for me? Well, that was something that I was thinking about that recently. Writing orthography is pretty important, right? But anyways, I just leave it there. Is there anybody that wants to say something else in favor of millennials or in favor of not millennials? Or some other sayings you've heard between students or instructor circles?
I'm being a millennial right now.
Right. Okay. No? All right. We're going to move on. So I'm going to give you an overview of the study, what I did and how I did it. So I combined data from language majors and non-language majors, right? You would ask yourselves why. I asked myself that question last week, and I said, why did I do that? But I'm going to tell you why. It also correlates data from 3 impact classes, right? So I got data from 3 classes of mine. In some of my major, my language major class, here, Nestor around. Ah, there you are. So it is your data which I want to be discussing. Yes, basically our class in LAI. Okay. Also, it correlates data from language majors and teachers. And finally, it portrays some millennials' learning preferences. More specifically, well, it was about language, but actually you can expand that into some other areas. So the impact classes were language majors, 19 participants, 14 female and 3 male. On average, 19-year-olds, and their IBT TOEFL test was 88, which is high, the score. And this sample was taken over spring, sorry. Then I had another sample, which is about non-language majors, an EFL class. And they were 20 participants, 13 female and 7 male, 21-year-olds on average. Their total score was set at 73. And this sample was taken in the summer. Then I took another sample, and that was the same, an EFL class, 15 participants, 9 female, 6 male, and they were on average 20 years old. And this sample was taken over this semester. And it's just a couple of weeks ago. They do not have a TOEFL test. For obvious reasons, it was very difficult to put that into the class, so I couldn't do that. Anyways. And then I asked a couple of instructors to help me out with the questionnaire. And that was 1 female and 1 male instructor. Actually, I have data from more instructors, but I haven't had time to put it together yet. So I will do that later. And the instruments I used, it was an IBT TOEFL test, which was taken at random. So I took that test at random, and then I give it to the participants, a learning style questionnaire, and a background information survey. So I used these 3 instruments to collect the data to be analyzed. And for the analysis, I'm basically using correlations, right? I'm using Pearson, and you're going to see what that is. So some of you may be thinking, what the heck is that? I'm going to let you know what that is. All right, ready for the results? Right, so follow to your seats. There you go. there you go, non-language majors and language majors. You see this nice line? Actually, there's a lot of correlation, and they fit between sometimes and groupings. So there's the gap here, and the correlation is very strong. 0.78 is very strong. So I was thinking, and I said, why do I have a correlation so high if I am taking a language major and a non-language major class? And I said, why? And then I was wondering why I have these results. Then I said, no, I have to take another sample to see what's going on here. It's not possible that they fit so perfectly. So then I took another sample, and I found the same thing. Correlation was not 0.78, but it's 0.75, which is still strong. And then one day I woke up in the middle of the night and I say, of course, they are millennials. I mean, whether they are language majors or no language majors, still they are millennial students. So it is logical that they both fit. You know? The nice thing, the interesting thing. Absolutely, I do that.
No, the other. Yeah.
So then I reasoned and I thought, I said that of course they are millennials, so they have to correlate. It doesn't matter if they are language majors or non-language majors, but they have to correlate on that specific variable. And then I came up with the idea of asking a couple of instructors who are not millennials to give us some information on that. And then I correlated this with language majors. You ready? There you go. So as you can see, there is some kind of not very fine or very nice correlation between millennials and non-millennials. In other words, there's not much correlation between learners' preferences and teachers' preferences in that sense. And the correlation is 0.5, which is not bad. But in the statistics, you would say that a correlation of 0.7, 0.8 is strong. There's not much correlation. There's correlation, but not much in those terms. Anyways, look at this. I want you to focus here. Here we have two variables, two important variables, visual, auditory. Our learners, as I said before, are more visual than textual learners. So former generations, my father, and even my father-in-law who's older, they would say that people do not read much now. But I think that we do read a little bit, not as much as they did before, but there are some other ways of reading. We read different genres in a sense, right? Different things. Personally, as opposed to my wife, who reads novels and literature, I do not read much literature. I do not read that at all. What I do read is statistics books and these technical things, which you may say is very weird. But that is me. That's how I do things. And I don't read much literature in that sense. So in a sense, this visual auditory thing, here. Look, our students are basically visual learners. Look at this. Visual learners. More than textual learners. So what do we have to do? So we can do two things. Learners become more textual, or instructors provide more visual input. Okay? So that is something that you have to decide. Anyways, what do you say about my results? I'm very happy.
where people will also make a make so that in a sense they are going to correlate.
Right, that
And
is
probably
this is teachers, right? Yeah, absolutely.
the better right?
Yeah, rugby teachers.
As they are English teachers or language teachers, at some point they are going to have some things where they are.
Right, there is some kind of.
intersecting.
Right, absolutely. For instance, I'm sorry, I should have done this line down here. There is a line here, right? So actually this would be just visual. And we can observe here that instructors or teachers, they scored 2 below. But actually, millennials, they score at about 2.5 up. There's a gap, right? But that does not mean that instructors are not visual. The only thing that this means is that millennials are even more visual than that. That's what it means, right? And here, look at this. Look at this nice curve. So other instructors would go like here in this section and in this section, but millennials would go here. Like sometimes and often in this nice section. Okay. Any other question or any other comment you want to make? Nestor?
I have a question. Do you think that it's possible for a non-millennial to teach in a millennium way?
Can you please repeat the question?
Oh yeah. Do you think it is possible for a non-millennial to teach in a millennium way? Sorry.
Yes, absolutely. This is possible, and vice versa is possible as well. That a millennial would have the tendency of not learning in the traditional way. Both the directions would be fine. But for that, we would need to engage in a collaborative learning, instructor and students. Because technology has made a very big gap between former generations and actual and current generations. Technology has made that this gap is huge now. And instructors, some of us may feel like, or probably we are afraid of technology, some of us. And on the other hand, students are not. So while students can teach or can show us how to handle technological things, so the instructor can provide some other ways of learning. So the best thing of addressing this issue is that engaging in a cooperative learning, not controlling class, not all-knowing instructor in front of you, student-centered. To answer your question more straightforward, yes. All right. Is there any other question?
Another question about field dependent and independent.
Sure, I can address that. Well, field independent means that you can work in chaos. That it doesn't matter what happens around you, but you can work. And this field dependent means that you need a very quiet space in which you can study. So while these learners work in chaos, these learners need a quiet space to study or to do assignment or homework in that sense. Right?
Could you please explain open and
Repeat this to closure orientation.
yes, so global versus particular.
Right, they can do that. So, close oriented means that you are more, you are not that flexible. So write a period or a comma after a sentence. If you are close oriented, so it means that if you didn't write a comma there, or if you didn't write the tilde there, that is wrong for you. But open oriented would be something like, well, it's just a comma, it's just a period, it's just Jesus without a tilde is always going to be Jesus. Yeah, in that sense. So in that aspect, you should feel like open would be more relaxed learner, or more, and close oriented would be more straight in that sense. Global, between global and particular, this means that you want to go from the whole thing to the specific. So you want to have the big picture of it. And after you have the big picture, then you go to the details. In particular, you have to do with, okay, so just give me the specific things, or being more specific. I could show you the instrument with this, the scriptures, but I think that's going to take us a lot of time. That's why I put it that way. Yes, Les.
What's interesting, I think, is all these poor 19-year-olds have suffered so many years of education. How much might that have affected their kind of natural learning styles? In other words, how much have they been
Right.
their natural personalities, I mean, I have to be careful with the negative words here, have been affected by the teaching style over so many years, compared with how they might be if they didn't receive education.
Right. That's a very hard question to answer.
We don't know, but
We don't know that.
but the correlation may be even worse.
Yeah, probably.
If learners haven't been kind of trained
Right.
into certain kinds of learning styles, even with the TOEFL exam and things like that.
Right.
They're
Well,
very
the influence of technology. You see, just looking at the influence of technology on learning, there is something very interesting that about our brains. The millennial brain is wired differently, and they think differently. They do not believe. Their beliefs, attitudes, and values are different. In addition to that, their brain is differently shaped. So there's a very delicate question to address. It's a very delicate issue. What I would do is just engage with my students in a mutual learning, giving them freedom to make their decisions. That's what I would do, but always guiding them. Because I wouldn't be able to, I was talking to an instructor this morning, just to take my student or my kid, as I call them, and throw him in the river. And said, if you cross river, you'll get an A. But if you don't cross river, keep trying it. Which is like, in that sense. So, I would be the kind of instructor that would try to guide them in that sense. Then, in a sense, we're using our subject matters to create better people. So in that sense, getting out of this a little bit. I'm not sure if I answered your question as well.
Yeah, again, you and I think I agree in how we might start, but I'm just thinking about we're still in a kind of very traditional learning system at the moment, and how does that affect the potential of those students?
Right, it affects terribly. Because I want to give you an example. Let's suppose that a linguist, a descriptive linguist, meets with a prescriptive instructor. They will hurt each other. And how you learn not to hurt each other? That's experience. What teaches you that. And that is what young people have to learn from old people. And there are many things that old people have to learn from young people. Right? That's why I would go back to what Nestor asked me. And I think that the best way to come up with a nice learning environment would be cooperation between both parties in that sense. Yes, it's
Okay, one of the things that we are not aware of is our learning style. If we are not aware of how we learn, we are not going to know what is best for us. And the same thing, we don't know what our teaching style is.
right.
We are not aware of that until we teach for a long period of time. And then I say, this is what I want to do with my teaching and the subject I have to teach.
Right.
But the idea is that as learners, we are, in early age, we are set to just to obey things, to do things,
Right.
and we are never asked for our opinion.
Right.
So we are not aware of how we learn. So
Right.
this is what works with me, and
Right.
also the teachers
That's
should
correct.
think what works for them and what works for each one of them, because everyone is a different being, right?
Absolutely.
So they have some things in common, but not everything.
Right.
The same. So the very first thing we should do as teachers and learners, to think as learners, is to know what is the best way we can learn.
Absolutely.
And then the teacher has to see how he teaches best.
Well, absolutely. The important thing there is just how dynamic instructor we are. And if our tendency of teaching the way we learn is still present in our minds, and how willing we are to change in our attitude and many other things. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Okay, yes.
I just have one last question. Coming back to the chart, I've seen that the biggest difference between, not the other, the one we were in, no, between teachers and majors,
Yes.
the biggest difference is in literal. I want to know what literal means.
Sure. Well, let's put these two together. Metaphoric, literal. It says that millennials accommodate knowledge better when they are metaphoric than literal. So if you can relate one specific event to something metaphorical in your mind, you will remember that, as opposed to being literal. Like saying, you should not, and let me think of something like for myself. You should not put your toys into your mouth. That's literal. But if I look for something that's metaphorical, and then I tell him that metaphorically, he will remember better than telling him things more literal. Okay? So this helps us to internalize, accommodate, and retrieve things better, in a sense. When you say literal here, it's like, remember the thing, la letra con sangre entra. So we have that tendency of memorizing the whole book to come the day of the test and say, oh, sorry, you forgot one word here, so you got 0 here. Of course, we're gonna get a 0 because we're more metaphorical than literal. So in a sense, what we have to do there is just to be a little bit more flexible on that. Paraphrasing would be great. Paraphrasing would be great, as opposed to answering something as it is written by somebody else. And this also bring us to something interesting. Teach people to think, not to repeat what somebody else said. And let people decide if it is good or if it is bad, but let that to them.
Question, well, continuing with what Eddie just said. Well, you as a teacher, and remember you as a student, would you represent that a teacher should adapt to the students, or the student should adapt to the
There's always a kind of negotiation there. It's always negotiation there. Your personality also plays an important role there. But something I can tell you for sure is that I always remember those instructors that always, in a sense, were those controlling instructors. I do not remember like very nicely, but I do remember those instructors who always supported me and who gave me feedback in that sense, with very good ratio in that sense. We should work together. It's not an issue of working just the instructor alone and giving you the assignment. It's just follow this. But just there's always an issue of negotiation. Okay, you're gonna do this thing. What do you need to do this? So moving things that way would make people feel better. An instructor will feel a lot better because he feels that what he's doing is having an influence and an impact on the future generations that will be in charge of this thing. I did I answer your question? Because I had the tendency of not answering questions. Yeah, sorry.
Okay. Yeah, I think
In a sense.
maybe I could say that I can say, I myself, I used to talk about learning and teaching and learning process, right? But now we are not in that process anymore. I think we are inter-learning. Because both parts, the teacher and the learner are interacting and they are teaching each other things.
Right.
So it is not like a one-way,
No, it's
it's
not.
not a one-way street, it's a two-way thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
So in that case, you say, okay, I don't know how to handle technology.
Right.
So you say, okay, I need to do this. So one student is going to help me how to do this. Okay, I don't know how to manage, let's say, test and spreadsheet. Okay, so you have to do this, and these are the elements I want to do. So I keep in there and keep prepared.
Absolutely.
The
Because
presentation.
while you were learning how to work out pressing, the other student is gaining your expertise and your experience on that. So why should I do this activity like that with this input? They would be learning that, and you're learning something like that. As well. And an issue of you mentioned this thing once. You said it's very important to learn and to unlearn. We have to be ready to unlearn them. All right, so we do not have any questions or any other comments. I just want to address this thing. We said this before. It is true that millennials get distracted easily because they are busy texting. It is true. They're busy texting, so they do not pay attention to you. And millennials do not read much because they are more visual than textual. But that doesn't mean that millennials do not read or do not engage in learning. It's simply that they are different people in different generations. No more than that. Let's remember this. Traditional schooling is not effective anymore. It's not effective anymore with millennials. And the effectiveness of instruction lies in the congruence between the learning styles of the learners and also the instruction. It has to be congruent. If there's not something lined up there, there's going to be problem. It's just logical thinking down there. Let me see if I have something else. Oh, we said testing. And I want to finish with testing. Instruction needs to be more anecdotal. Okay? So look for opportunities to take your students outside. Because sometimes, staying there in the room, it's just like not appropriate for learning sometimes. Take your learners to field trips. Sometimes you will learn much more when you're in a field trip, actually doing something than just lecturing as I am doing right now. Okay, so that's pretty much what I have. And this is a work in progress. I'm still working on that. And hopefully with this by the end of the semester if I get some time. Otherwise, I will finish next